Hi, Karen Romano Young back again with some more of A Girl, a Raccoon, and the Midnight Moon, with pictures by Jessica Bagley, published by Chronicle Kids this year, 2020. Chapter 8, On the Stoop, September 2nd. Starts with one of Jessica's beautiful pictures. A clacking footstep told Pearl that Francine was nearby, so she sneaked to the end of the nonfiction stacks and peered into the children's room. Francine was in the picture book section, slowly studying the spines. "What are you looking for?" Pearl asked. "See if she'll tell you," said Alice. "She won't tell me. She actually came in and registered for a library card this morning. Took the oath and everything." She lowered her voice so only Pearl could hear. "Pearl, this is what we want people to do. It's what we need them to do. So what if she's not a big reader yet? Go easy on her." One thing that was aggravating about this library, how everybody on the staff thought they were Pearl's parents. "Why should I?" whispered Pearl. "She's weird and annoying, and she thinks she belongs here, and she thinks it's just all so dramatic and exciting that Vincent's head got stolen, and—" "She does belong here," said Alice. "Anyone in the neighborhood belongs here. Besides," she put a hand on Pearl's head, "imagine having no place else to go. Be kind." Pearl pulled away, but gently, and went and looked out at Lancaster Avenue. She wanted to be kind to Alice, but Francine? Maybe not. Not yet, anyway. Up there above Gully's store where Francine lived, the windows were dark. But it was cozy inside the library, all the lights lit on this cloudy, still rainy morning. Anyone would like it here. She went closer to Francine. "Do you need help finding a book?" Pearl was very formal, like a host. "Nope," said Francine. "No, thank you." She made a little bow. Such a weirdo. "Why not?" asked Pearl, insulted. "Recommendations are created by the staff, with inspiration from the spirit of Edna St. Vincent Millay herself." She had made that up on the spot to impress Francine. "I bet," Francine said with a short laugh. "No, I'll know it when I see it. I like picking stuff myself personally, and then I'll take it out with my own personal, brand new library card and take it home to my own personal house." "You can do that with any book in the whole library," said Pearl. "This one has to be the first one, but I don't know what it's called." A sidebar about oaths. Here's the sidebar. Every time someone gets a new library card, they have to take this oath. "When I write my name in this book, I promise to take good care of the books I use at home and in the library, and to obey the rules of the library. I promise never to take out more than 50 books at a time." M.A.M. with reporting by Matilda Malamar. Except for the last 3 lines, this oath is the one that was instituted by Anne Carroll Moore, head of the Office of Work with Children, in 1911, when children were first allowed into the New York Public Library at the Central Children's Library at 42nd Street and 5th Avenue. Francine took a deep breath and let Pearl help, looking wary. "It's got construction equipment in it, a shovel called Mary Ann." "Mike Mulligan," said Pearl, rolling her eyes. "Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel," said Alice, swooping past. She bent over, holding her belly to scan the B shelf. The book wasn't there. "Well, I just read it for story hour this week," said Alice. "Maybe one of the kids who was there took it out." "That's where I heard it," said Francine. "I'll put a hold on it," said Alice. And when she looked up the book, it hadn't been taken out. It was just missing. Another theft? Francine's face fell. Alice handed her a different book by the same author, The Little House. The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton, Houghton Mifflin, 1942, which also had steam shovels in it, but not one named Mary Ann. Francine flipped through. Pearl couldn't help glancing over her shoulder from time to time. The little house was beloved too. How could you not love the little house that stayed the same while big houses took over the meadows beside it, as taller buildings took over the houses, as skyscrapers took over the buildings, and the city came to the country? And then the ending when the little house gets yanked up and put on a truck and taken away. Francine slammed the book shut. Mine, she said, and hugged it. Together, Mom and Pearl sat on the front stoop of their apartment in the low evening light to play gin, listening to the city's hum-thrumming tune of horns, sirens, strollers, bikes, skateboards, feet walking, people talking, baths and beds and babies. Billy Bilbao, the artist lady, Francine's granny, humped and lumped along the sidewalk toward them. She'd been Gully's tenant forever, so they knew her by sight. She was a modern artist who went around every evening pulling a kid's red wagon, the kind with the high wooden sides, filling it full of clattering, banging, heavy-looking stuff, some of it broken. And here, on page 66, is another sidebar. A sidebar about page 66. Ask any circulation librarian. She'll tell you that the place to put the library's book stamp, a round stamp with the library's name and logo on it, is page 66. The stamp has two halves, like a hole punch, but instead of making a hole, it embosses the paper, presses it into a raised pattern you can feel. I don't know why they started doing it on page 66, but somebody did, and they do it to this day, at least at the Lancaster Avenue branch. My grandmother says page 66 is a good place to learn something about stories, too. If there is a page 66, it's not a picture book, so it's probably a couple hundred pages long. Any good book starts with a bang, and if it's a really good book, there will be another gentle sort of bang around page 66 that shows you're raising the stakes. Even if you drop the action down again, the reader knows you know what you're doing, right? By M.A.M. Evening, she called up. Pearl and Mom laid their cards in their laps. My granddaughter wants to formally introduce me. Francine came trailing up behind Billy, looking like introducing her was the last thing she wanted. This is my granny, she said. This is Mrs. Moran and Pearl Moran. They're the library people. Francine is in love with the library, exclaimed her grandmother. She'll be a 5th grader, Granny, Billy Bilbao said, and we are new to each other. Really? Asked Mom. It was an invitation to tell more. Francine is living with me while her parents are out of the country. Francine's eyes, usually so full of light, got dark like the sun had gone behind the clouds. She clearly didn't like hearing Granny talk about her parents. That made even Pearl not say anything. Look, said Granny, maybe to make a distraction. A broken lampshade, knock off Tiffany. She pointed at the wagon, indicating a stained glass shade with yellow tulips and green leaves on a marbled plum-colored background. And look at these fabulous springs. They were thick metal coils, and my favorite of the day, 3 spent mylar balloons. They looked, well, like she'd pulled them out of trash cans. Pearl guessed that was the point. Granny grinned at the look on her face. Everybody's a fool for something. Well, come on, Frank, that's enough for one night. Frank? Francine's dark look changed to alarm at what was obviously a nickname she was not fond of. Pearl smiled. See ya, she said. She thought the whole scene was funny. Francine, so fancy and glittery, covered in trash, being called Frank. But she could see Francine was mortified, and that made her feel some sympathy. And she didn't say anything rude as Francine slumped away. But that was enough Francine for the day, Pearl felt, so she changed the subject to something she knew would grab Mom's whole attention. Could a raccoon write? She asked. If Mom was surprised, she didn't show it. She didn't even blink. If you can read, you can write, said Mom. Oh, Mom, said Pearl, I meant physically, could it write? It? He or she, please. Come on, with those paw fingers, you know. That's what I mean. Your fingers aren't what you write with, said Mom. It's your brain that writes. Pearl flopped backward on the stoop and looked up at the shadowy leaves and the slate blue sky beyond them. She couldn't remember the last time Mom had read her a story. She longed to be years younger, when she was still little enough to curl up next to Mom and hear a story, when the library wasn't going anywhere and everything was perfect. Ma, said Pearl, what do the raccoons that live in the garden do in the winter? Mom laid her gin cards in her lap. I'd have thought you were too old for raccoon stories, she said. Pearl didn't look at her mother's face. She kept on looking at the leaves, but she invited, as her mother had taught her when she was very little. Do tell. Well, Mom said, warming to the old invitation, you would think that raccoons would just make a nest in the leaves, curl up in a stripy ball, and sleep the winter away. You would think that, said Pearl, but, Mom said, our raccoons aren't just any raccoons. They know what's what. And what's that? They know that winter is the best time to curl up with a book and read the cold away. Don't they get cold in the tree? Don't they ever go inside? Pearl was thinking of the paw in the basement, the note that had seemed to be, but couldn't have been, could it? From the raccoons, ask Mrs. M. Wasn't that what Pearl was doing right now, asking Mrs. M? Inside where? Maybe someplace out of the way, like the basement, said Pearl, feeling like she knew a secret. Not that I've ever observed, said Mom. Nope, they stay in the trees where they can keep an eye on things, patrol the rats, and stay out of the way of the coyotes, and probably reread those letters you wrote them. Oh, and they kept those? She hardly believed it. How else do you think they know you? Yes, that's right. Pearl had left tiny notes and letters and even books she'd drawn and stapled together, tucked under the edges of the soft-serve milk. Why ever had she stopped? Because of Simon, of all people. Now she knew he wouldn't have teased, but when she was in second grade, she'd thought that writing to raccoons might seem like something only little kids did. They grow up so fast, said Mom. Little Matilda Malamar and her sister Eileen might have children of their own now. I wonder if they do. Why don't you ask Mrs. Malamar, Pearl suggested. Ask Mrs. M again. She felt her heart pick up, but she tried not to look flustered. Mom shrugged, sighed. She's so busy, and we're on such opposite schedules. Our paths never even cross. Once I saw her when I was up in the middle of the night, coming home from work. Here was the story Pearl had been looking for. What's Mrs. Malamar's job? She asked. Putting out the midnight moon, of course. She's the editor-in-chief, Mom said. Otherwise, how will the raccoons of Lancaster Avenue know who's who and what's what? Who's who and what's what is the motto of the Midnight Moon. The Midnight Moon, in Mom's stories, was the nighttime edition of the regular Moon newspaper, catering to a nocturnal readership, not like the morning and evening moons with their diurnal, night-sleeping readership. Pearl laughed, rolled onto her stomach, and turned over her playing cards. You don't believe me, said Mom. Pearl smiled. She saw again in her mind's eye the raccoon face in the basement peering through the glass. She thought she might tell Mom about it, but... How do you feel about school starting? Mom asked out of nowhere. Are you glad Francine will be there? Mom meant she'd have a friend at last. Pearl didn't want to talk about friends. She blurted, Mom, who are your friends? Mom didn't go out with people, men or women. Her only boyfriend, if you could call him that, was Bruce. Mom hadn't stayed in touch with her older brother since their parents died when Pearl was a baby, and she didn't have the least idea where Pearl's own father was, so she'd better not keep asking Pearl about Francine. Pearl didn't want to think about 5th grade yet. She would rather hear about Matilda and Eileen, babyish as it might be. There was a girl in Pearl's class, Khadijah, who she'd have liked to be friends with, if only Khadijah wasn't friends with mean Elsa. Then she had a horrifying thought. What if Francine got to be friends with Elsa and Khadijah, and nobody was friends with Pearl? Everybody in 5th grade was jerks. She hated that Mom had brought up the subject of school. Relax, said Mom. Your shoulders are up to your ears. Pearl dropped them and scowled down at her cards. Francine likes you, Pearl, that's all, her mother said. She does not, said Pearl. Oh, then it must be the books, said Mom. She stared at Pearl until Pearl had to smile. Admit it, Mom insisted. She likes the books and you. Pearl shrugged. What's so weird about that, said Mom. When Pearl didn't answer, she said, Are you going to play your turn or not? Pearl drew a card and considered. Francine liked her? The thought had not occurred to her. Yes, Francine wanted to be where the drama was, and ever since Vincent's head had been stolen, that was the library. And because Francine was a kid, naturally she would glom on to another kid, whoever was there. Pearl crossed her arm over her stomach, as if to guard herself from being friends with Francine, but she couldn't deny, as she questioned herself closely, that the idea of being liked gave her a warm little glow under the place on her stomach where her left thumb rested. You're surprised, Mom asked. Pearl nodded and pulled her lips inside her mouth to stop the smile. Well, you shouldn't be.